think. Yes.
What advice would you give someone who's thinking about starting up voice acting?
Learn to act. No, seriously, because a lot of people who say, I want to be a voiceover artist. I talk all the time. Why not get paid for it? But that's not it. My friend Tommy Smeltzer, who started out as a producer before he became a voice actor, he says when someone tells him he wants to get into voice acting, he tells them, go home and read out loud for an hour every day for 2 weeks, then come back to me. And he has yet to have anyone come back. Because, I mean, and I didn't know why he said that at first, but over the years I've realized the single most distinguishing factor between voice acting and other forms of acting is the reading. You're always reading, you know? And I've figured out that most people are not able to read words on a page without sounding like they're reading words on a page. And that's the one thing you can't do in voice acting, is sound like you're reading words on a page, even though you are. Oh my gosh, there's a small child here. Have I cursed yet?
I was wondering...
I bet you were. Okay, you better stop.
Have you ever bombed somebody in the recording studio? Has anybody ever bombed you? You know what I mean, right? When somebody says a line and you hear it and it messes you up because they're...
Oh, yes. Yeah, see, that's why you need to get on the microphone so people can share in the knowledge. He asked me that earlier, and what I said is, most of the time you don't, because just out of respect to the people on the other side of the booth who are recording and actually trying to get a show recorded within a specific amount of time, if you're the person who's making jokes and ruining a take, you're actually costing them money. So generally you don't. But on occasion, if it's a group of people who are very comfortable with each other and you know there's something that's really just going to crack somebody up, you might slip it in.
Yeah.
We have to leave and then come back. We're back! You spot anybody?
I want to ask a question.
What the?
Yes. What?
Raise your hand.
I
He doesn't have to. He's got his own microphone.
Don't mess with me. I just have a question. How did it feel when Futurama got picked back up?
Ooh. It felt great. It was a complicated thing eventually. I mean, we were all very excited to be back. Although the thing was, it wasn't the, really incredible moment that it might have been had we not done the 4 movies right before that. Because the thing was, even though we were canceled and off the air for a very long period of time, 6 or 7 years, something like that, we did the movies, the straight-to-DVD movies, after about 4 of those years, or 3 or 4 years, we didn't do the show at all, but then we did those. So everybody sort of felt like we were kind of back in the groove. Coming back for the movies was really more of the resurrection for us. That was when we came back to the characters. That's when, as some person on the internet pointed out, the voice of Hermes changed. I was like, well, he's an elder now. People grow and change over time. And some of us don't go back and listen to the old episodes. But it's basically the same thing. Department.
Manwich, please.
My manwich!
What was your experience like doing improv? And as you did improv, where did you get your inspiration from? And did you ever get nervous when you were doing it?
I started out, yes. Yes, you get nervous doing improv, because you never know what's going to happen. When you're working with people that you're familiar with, it's less so. I started out doing improv in college. There was a buddy of mine who was from Chicago who had studied at Second City and Improv Olympic, and he came and basically, it was very weird, he described something called the Herald to us, which is an improvisational form that goes like 20 minutes on a single suggestion. And so we said, okay, let's try that based on your description. And then we formed a group and we started performing around the school, and we traveled to Chicago to study at Second City and with Del Close, the person who had invented this improv form. And that was just pretty mind expanding. My experience of it was, improv was almost a religion. It was a pretty simple one, like all the good ones. The basic principle was yes and. Whatever someone gives you, accept it and add to it. And at 19, that was like a light on. It's like, oh my God, this is a life philosophy. You say yes to everything and add something to it. And actually, as a life philosophy, it works pretty well. Because you can't fight things in life. Things happen. Things are what they are. Accept them, and if you want them to be different, add something different to them. And so, it was my life and the basic workings of my brain for several years, and it made me kind of a schmuck at times, especially when I got on the whole honesty kicks. Like, it's all about being truthful and honest. That's why I'm going to tell you this thing that's going to hurt your feelings. But I grew out of that. But I continued to do improv and continue to do improv, less out of ego or audience, but just really for my own. It makes me feel good, and it's freeing. It's for some people it's exercise. It gets the endorphins going. For me, it's improv, and I think I will hopefully always come back to that as a touchstone. Who's that?
Let me get some person back.
Which one? All the way back?
No, one in the middle. The gentleman.
Yes, you at the weekend. Yes.
Yes. No stuff.
Was there any character that you tried out for that you didn't get and were just really bummed out about it? The same voice that you really wanted to do?
Yes. Do I remember them? That's the question. The only one I can think of now that I regret not getting was Aqualad in Young Justice. Because I thought I did a very good job. But I was fortunate enough to be cast to play Aquaman in the same. And then it's funny because that episode I came in and they were playing people's references from the auditions that they had, so they could remind them of what the voices they were. And Kari Payton, who got the part of Aqualad, they played his audition, and I was like, oh yeah, that was much better than what I did. Okay. Which actually is usually the case in voiceover. Most of the time, if I audition for something, even something I really want, and I find out somebody else gets it, 99% of the time what they did was better than what I did. And I go, all right, fine. It should be better than just be me. Zach.
I listened to your interview with Rob Paulson on Talking Tunes, and that was the story where Sam Jackson just stares you down in the scene. Has anyone scared you as much as that on his head ever?
Well, I think it was a story I told in a podcast on the set of Pulp Fiction. There's this scene in the apartment where Sam Jackson has the gun on Brett, where Jules has the gun on Brett, and at one point Marvin has a line. He says, "Where's the briefcase?" And Marvin starts to say, "It's over there." And he turns and says, "I don't remember asking you a damn thing." And in rehearsal, Samuel L. Jackson said that line to me, looked over to me, said that line, and then went back looking to Frank Whaley. When we were rolling, he changed it. And he said, it's like, "I don't remember asking you a damn thing." And he stayed looking at me. And then he did his next line to Brett, and he was still looking at me. And, you know, at first I was, you know, in the scene, I was acting and everything, and then I'm like, "What did I say? I'm looking at him." And he looked really mad. Did I do something wrong? And you know that feeling when somebody's looking at you with real anger, and you're like, and the real fear you feel? That's what I was feeling. Like, what's, and you know, and I mean, he was just incredible in that scene. It was, again, another lesson I learned, because here was a man who was playing a hitman, you know, not going around like this, "I'm gonna kill you." He was playing a hitman. Not that different, you know, in behavior from himself. Do you know what I mean? Like, Jules didn't act wildly different from the way Samuel L. Jackson acts. But we'd be in between scenes, and he'd be drinking coffee and talking about golf or his daughter's school or something, and say, "All right, Sam, we're ready to go." "All right." And then all of a sudden, the person you were talking to a couple of minutes ago ceased to exist. And you looked at this person, and you were looking into someone else's eyes. I mean, honestly, I don't know how he did it, but he became a different person in the space of seconds, without any no BS at all. And it really, it set a very high watermark for me, because I mean, it's funny because at the same time, Frank Whaley was telling stories of working on The Doors and how Val Kilmer, you know, sent out a memo that everyone should refer to him as Jim or Mr. Morrison, and you know, nobody look at him. You know, this like, and young actors go through a lot of nonsense to try to stay in character or create feeling. And here was this guy going from golfing father to cold-blooded assassin like that. You know, I'm like, okay, that's the goal. To try to figure out the pathways inside yourself so that you can get where you need to go that effortlessly and that completely. Someday I'm gonna get there. Red shirt.
Would you let Hermes do your accounting?
Would I let Hermes do my accounting?
Or do your finances?
Absolutely! The man is committed to everything being right. So actually, maybe not.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. That's either of those.
Long sleeve and then guy in the back. Yeah.
What was it like working on the Justice League?
Justice League was fantastic. It was a blast. Even though people on the internet made it a little hard at first for George Newbern. It's like, "He's not Tim Daly, he doesn't sound like Superman, his voice, why does he get hurt every time somebody shoots a rocket in his chest? I don't like it!" And the truth of the matter is, George sounded just like Tim. Come on. But everybody was so happy when Tim Daly came back, whatever. You know, it was a blast. The people we got to, I mean, Carl Lumley and just working with Kevin Conroy was just so great. Everybody was really nice and really talented. And then we got these fantastic guest stars. I think everybody from Firefly at some point guested on the show. And then, I mean, just other people like William Smith, you know, like this old B-movie character actor who I think actually played Conan's father in Conan the Barbarian with Schwarzenegger. You know, we had all sorts of people come in there. And yeah, and also the work was fantastic. I mean, as Jon Stewart, I got to play being on trial for murder, you know, be in a love triangle where my girlfriend's ex-boyfriend is trying to take over the earth. You know, and also I got to have a love affair with Gina Torres. So, I mean, as far as what I got to play as that character, I mean, nothing in my on-camera career has ever come close. And the writing was so good, and the show itself was so good. It was a pleasure. And I'm glad we got to do it for as long as we did. Oh, guy in the back, yes.
I know that on a lot of these shows, you got to play a lot of characters at once.
Mm-hmm.
The scene where, like, they're having one of your characters talk to another one of your characters, it's kind of hard to switch back and forth between voices. Something like that.
It depends on the voices and where you are in the process. For me, it's a voice doesn't really lock in until after I see the first episode. I'm not sure why that is, but I think it's almost like once I see the cartoon, it's the actual character, and then I can just imitate it. But before that, you're just sort of kind of guessing. It's like, well, I'm this guy.
Oh, I'm John Stewart, all right?
And then you see it like, oh, okay.
Now I'm John Stewart, Green Lantern of Sector 2814. Come on, Flash! This is serious!
There were a few episodes during that period when we were doing the DCUA where Static and the Justice League crossed over, and I was doing the voice of Virgil Hawkins in Static Shock as well. And that was fun. It was a challenge because the voices are two very different placements. But it was exciting. I mean, and at that point I'd already been working on Futurama, so I'd seen Billy West do 3 characters talking to themselves at the same time, like 3 wildly disparate characters. You know, like the first episode of Futurama, the professor introduces Fry to Zoidberg. You know, and he's doing this, and I mean, and you can't, when you go back and watch that episode, there's no way you can tell one single human being is doing all of those voices. So getting the chance to try to come anywhere close to that, you know. It's like,
You know, Static, you'll be a real credit to the league when you finally get in.
what, you mean, when I get in? You know, being able to move back and forth it's tough. And I think I probably did end up recording the 2 voices separately just to make sure that Static was really where he needed to be in terms of like my higher register. I mean, the Jon Stewart voice was pretty solid.
You know, I can get to here wherever I need to. You know, and it's actually, a lot of people think it's the exact same as Sig from Jack and Daxter. But Sig is actually deeper.
You with the hat.
Have you ever innocently used the catchphrase of one of the characters you voiced over in your real life at home?
No. Certainly none of mine. Because you actually don't end up saying them often enough for it to like seep in. I mean, you guys watch the episodes a lot more than we record them. We only record them once. Although, it's funny, there was a character that Nicole Sullivan used to do on Mad TV called Antonia, who was special. Antonia was a little special girl. And she would always go, Eve, okay. And I do find myself doing that a lot. Are you coming to dinner? Okay. Maybe it's possible. It's funny. Yes.
One of my favorite characters that you've done
Oh, favorite. Moving on. No, I'm kidding.
is Wilt from Foster's Home. And
Oh, I'm sorry. You going through? Okay, I got the door. No, I'm sorry.
and I was just curious as to how that voice came about. How did you develop that?
It's funny because that was actually one of the ones that at the beginning they said, we want it to be your own voice, which I hate when they say that because I don't know what they're talking about. Which voice? Which one? Which your own voice? You know, this voice that I use when I'm talking to an audience of mostly white people? Or the voice I use when I'm talking to my cousins? Hey, there's always a context. So Wilt was my apologetic voice. You know, it started out like this, and sorry, and then became a little more so because he was taller. Sorry. Hey, Blue, that is not okay. I'm sorry I had to say that, but no. So basically, it was my voice lengthened. And sorry.
Way in the back.
Yes. All the way in the corner. We're gonna call you baby. Oh wait, no, nobody puts baby in the corner. Wait, say that again, what was the first part?
For roles like Static and Justice League, did you go and read the comics, get a feel for the character, or did you just go in and be like, I got this?
Man, what you I've worked on a number of comic book related projects. Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, Static Shock, Justice League. Let me put it this way. When a guest star came into Justice League, and you know, doing some sort of character, I'm the Shining Knight, and they didn't have the character design, most of the time I could just reach into my backpack and pull out a comic book with the character in it. I'd been doing the research since I was 6. Generally speaking, for most comic book related stuff, I didn't have to do much research.
I love that answer.
2 arms.
Finally. I remember watching the Oscars this year, and Chris Rock came on and basically said, "Oh, voice acting is so easy." And I was just like, that kind of turned my blood to ice. But then I thought, maybe I should ask someone that's actually in the field. How do you feel about like these voice actors saying, "Oh, it's so easy," when you guys are working kind of hard to do it?
Well, you know what? What he said is 100% true. Voice acting is incredibly easy and incredibly lucrative if you're Chris Rock. If you are a multi-million-dollar stand-up and movie star, they make it incredibly easy for you. Yo, we're not even gonna give you a script, Chris. We don't want to tire out your eyes. Or we're just gonna describe the lines to you, and you just make it your own. So, no, I'm conflicted on this because every time there's an animated project, they want Chris Rock, and they don't have $1 million. I get it. I just come up there, they tell me the line. Some very small fraction of $1 million. So I agree wholeheartedly with everything Mr. Rock says, and I wish him nothing but the best. Who's had their hand up for a really long time?
To be honest.
Yep. Okay. You.
How do you go from doing a really, really serious role like in Afro Samurai to something as whimsical and beautiful as Possible for Imaginary Friends?
See, and this is going to sound like I'm being a jerk. You read the script. and it does. What I mean by that is you take what the writers are giving you, and you just try to do that to the best of your ability. And when they're giving you something like Foster's, which is sweet and funny and heartfelt, you go there. And when they're giving you something like Afro Samurai, which is, at times dark and just intense, you go there. For me, that's my thing. I don't have like a signature voice or a read. I go with the wind. I go where I'm needed. So yes, when, brother number one is being called on to destroy the number two, I'm there. And the directors, are invaluable in making sure you're where you need to be. But yeah, the scripts are so wildly different. And I think there are probably some things that I might not be able to get to. And then they hire someone else.
I was wondering if you ever just geek out over yourself, like if you're walking through you walk through Target and then you see Jon Stewart, the Green Lantern, as an action figure. Do you ever be like, oh, that's great?
Your first action figure is a pretty special moment. What was my first one? I think it must have been Jon Stewart. Although there were never any talking Jon Stewart talks. Although, 2 days ago, I was in Target, and there was an Iron Man mask, and I thought, wait a minute, I think I'm on this. And I sat there for 5 minutes pressing the button. Try me! This is the stuff, there's so many, and I'm